Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. His name is Terry Wolfe, Wolfe. This will be our seventh episode. We've covered a bunch of other different topics. He's an author, an accomplished author, and he publishes a lot on Substack. You'll see his Substack page here, which is The Winter Christian. But our earlier shows, we covered his books, Fire in the Rabbit Hole, Maybe Everyone is Wrong. Then we also talked about the upcoming digital ID or digital gulag, which we seem to at least be one step in, one foot in. The maybe everyone is wrong is a two-parter, so you can check that out. We also did the paradox of fundamentalism and Rise of the Beast, Four Kingdoms Explained, and so those are our shows go back to 2023. On my social media, I saw that he was covering this film that came out by Steven Spielberg, Disclosure Day, and it really rang a bell in my mind. Like there's people talking about it, people liked it, but it's in within the context of all this disclosure, uh, this disclosure, the disclosure conversations that are taking place, like within the government and media, and then this film drops from like a major director with quite a catalog of films, and there's a lot to talk about, but I saw the movie this morning and I literally left the theater thinking I just witnessed or watched one of the most evil movies ever made. And I'm really not exaggerating. Like there was so much dark stuff in here and so many symbols and things and Easter eggs and things that he was referencing that I knew of. And I left just in shock that this film was made in a lot of ways. And Terry has written about these kind of esoteric occult aspects of the film and what they were doing. Terry actually wrote the article about it being a satanic initiation. I'll bring up that article as well, but he can talk more about that. So Terry, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, William. I like to me the UFO psyop is sort of the other shoe waiting to drop. Like it's going to be the thing I think that ties a lot of like right now it doesn't seem like it because nobody cares about UFOs even when Trump is doing this disclosure process, supposedly nobody cares. It's kind of very uh, I think they're slow rolling it in such a way um, to not make a big deal out of it, but there are these elements. Spielberg appears to be part of that cabal that need to keep that story going to try to hype it up. What I wrote in before I actually saw Disclosure Day, I just saw preview stuff from it. Yeah, this one here, Disclosure Day is satanic initiation, but can it generate anti-Christian zeitgeist? Um, I ended up pointing to this New York Times article where, and people should probably know this already, that you know the Pentagon has been like reaching out to Christian pastors and televangelists and stuff, trying to convince them that they need to go to their congregations and prepare them for disclosure to basically soft launch this idea that Christianity is actually fake and that their churches are obsolete and really you're going to have to convert to whatever the Pentagon says is the truth. That's the new gospel. It's like it's such a bizarre, ham-fisted, awkward sort of way of trying to push this into Christianity. And before the show, you had mentioned, and I've having the conversation with other people, like, why is it just Christians? Wouldn't Muslims and Jews also be? It's not monotheistic, so any monotheistic religion should be challenged by this, but they're just specifically targeting Christians. Um, and so this New York Times article is like talking to some professor, so-called, pseudoscientist that's talking about these UFO experiencers, they call them, which is a term that Spielberg uses in the movie. He calls these people experiencers. And this is a very awkward fake word, right? Like nobody uses the term experiencer normally. But the interesting thing about the way they're presenting it is that, these people, the UFO phenomenon, the belief in this is not a religious belief. It's not you don't believe in aliens in the way that you believe in Jesus. That's UFO stuff. That's science. That's sacred. That's, you know, factual. And you're an experiencer if you have one of these trance-like, you know, uh, interactions with the non-human intelligence. That it's all dressed up as science. But why is it that when they have an experience, they're an experiencer, but if a Christian has a conversion or, you know, you know, this interface with God where they're convicted and they repent and they have this Holy Spirit, the transformation that takes place in all these Christians, they're just religious and it's just a belief. And so they're trying, that's sort of like the first trick already, is to frame the UFO PSYOP sort of community as not being religious. They're the real truth that has been suppressed and is waiting to sort of explode onto the scene and change everything. And so even earlier than this Disclosure Day stuff, last year, I wrote an article called Psionics Unveiled as Demon Worship and Disclosure as Mass Initiation. I wrote that in February of last year. And I have clips there. It probably won't be on the main page of my Substack. It's pretty old. I could link it to you here. So in there, I have clips of this News Nation interview with Jake Barber and Fred Baker, these special forces guys who openly talk about how these are demons, and they're saying that they're summoning them through what they call psionics, but what a Christian would just call worship. They're just worshiping these mysterious spirits, and they say that it's a spiritual process. They say that psionics is the process through which they can interface with these non-human intelligences. Like, it's all wordplay, but like when they call it demons themselves, and they say that the only way that you can summon them and interact with them and see these lights in the skies and sort of like command them to move, and they sort of do what you're trying to tell them to do, it's all spiritual, and you have to channel love towards them. It's like, this is pure religious, mystical experience. This is not some scientist in a lab coat doing measurements and like trying to be objective here. It is an emotional and spiritual thing, which is why Disclosure Day to me is like a perfect confirmation of my theory, where I was saying this disclosure is initiation and it's about demon worship, because in this movie, the whole point is ultimately that these aliens are trying to teach mankind how to love. Like, thanks, aliens. We really needed you to tell us that. Not like Jesus told us that. You know, we need aliens to tell us about empathy. And it's, again, a very emotional, spiritual, mystical process. And we can get into the actual symbolism that they use. But I find this very interesting, that the whole idea of aliens has transformed over time from biological creatures that just happen to evolve on other planets because the universe is so big, and then they happen to have advanced technology and they happen to come and visit us, and you know, so there's these little green men that just evolved in a different ecosystem, and we're sort of strangers to each other, and someday they might visit us and reveal themselves in a way that, you know, that's the classic like H.G. Wells science fiction thing. But by now it has become an almost entirely religious, mystical discussion even. And you are expected to, like, even in the movie, obviously they have this Christian Catholic character who is the only person who's like thinking about like what the implications are of if this gets disclosed, and they're paranoid that Christianity is going to collapse. Again, just a Christian, but for some reason Christians are going to collapse if this gets revealed. So there's a lot of I think a lot of very ham-fisted. Like, I don't think this is a good psyop. I think this is, first of all, like Disclosure Day is flopping. I mean, it might make its money back or whatever that, but
According to Wikipedia, it's made its money back already.
and that, considering it's like the most hyped thing in years, and there's nothing else really competing with it, that doesn't surprise me. But you know, everybody who comes out of the theater is sort of like, what the hell was that? Like, the people who just want a fun blockbuster, it's not a good blockbuster. The people who wanted this sort of deep intellectual argumentation of what this means and the implications, they don't get that. It's a very hollow movie. The CGI, if you just wanted to have sort of a spectacle of wonder what how they're going to portray aliens in this movie, because that's sort of the big twist you're waiting for. The CGI is terrible. And then there's just all this creepy stuff in there. So it's like, yeah, to
How they're interpreting it too. I mean, maybe what you can do also is just explain this. We're going to spoil the whole film for you guys. So if you haven't watched it, or, this is spoiler alert, so to speak. But maybe you can just talk about the general outline of the film and the characters and stuff like that.
Yeah. So the basic plot of the movie is that there is a whistleblower guy within the private military, paramilitary sort of organization that's been suppressing all this alien information. And that scientist, this main character, he wants to disclose everything. He's stolen the information, he's escaped from their facility, and he's now like searching for a way to get the footage to a reputable news station, which is already embarrassing because it's like, in the age of social media and TikTok and everything, like the idea that you have to get it to CNN and before it's real.
It's like boomer mentality of Spielberg or whoever wrote it. Like,
yeah, exactly. But so the plot is just how can he get to the media, but he's sort of only got half of the piece of the puzzle. And then you're introduced to Emily Blunt's character, who is this weather woman in Kansas, who is sort of awoken suddenly when a bird flies through the window, lands on her, dining room table, and she suddenly awakens these powers to read people's minds and to also project ideas and thoughts and basically mind control other people. Although it's presented somewhat innocently, it's really it's like casting spells. It's like witchcraft that she's doing. And so she gets these intuitive impulses of she has to be here, she has to leave, she has to go do this. And in the end, they meet up. And then it's sort of a race to escape this paramilitary group that's trying to stop them, although really not trying very hard. It's kind of embarrassing how the paramilitary group in here is one of the most amateur,
Keystone Cops or something.
Yeah, silly group I've ever seen as a bad guy group in an action movie. But anyway, they end up getting to the news station through all these synchronicities and sort of coincidences, and then the whole like last act of the movie is this. They start showing the footage in the theater. You're watching it, and they have this news anchors and the news stations are all picking it up, and it's supposed to be this very emotional and suspenseful sort of it's like there's no music, it's played very quiet and sincere and profound, that this footage is being revealed, and they have this news anchor commentating the whole thing and trying to make it seem as profound as possible, that she doesn't know what to make of it, and I'm sorry you have to see this, I know this is blowing your mind, and all this stuff. And it's like really trying to get sort of force it to be this poignant, transformative scene. I don't know how anyone else felt about it, but I was like almost laughing when I was seeing what they were considering the footage. But that's how it sort of culminates. And then the group behind this disclosure, the good guy group, they reveal that there is a literal like elder alien, and they show them to the world, and through the scientist guy can understand what the alien is saying, and he tells the weather woman, and she goes and tells the world. It translates for the world, and tells them to just listen. That's the final word of the movie. And so there is no message. Like, it's just setting up the idea that the aliens have something to say, and then leaving you in suspense, like a cliffhanger where you don't know what the message really is. You have to sort of read between the lines of what has been said throughout the movie, but it's really trying to program people to have this mystical infatuation with what these creatures would want to tell us, and then sort of leaving you in suspense, presumably so that the actual Pentagon or whoever's reaching out to these churches and telling Christians that, prepare to have your foundation of your religion destroyed, they will be prepared emotionally to hear that message. It's like John the Baptist trying to prepare you for the gospel. It's like trying to soften up any resistance that would come, I suppose. So that's the overt story, but there's lots of symbolism and subtext. I think it's supposed to be working as an allegory, and that's one of the article I wrote. Is I think I cracked the code of what that allegory is supposed to be.
And what's that allegory? Can you expand on that?
So the best way to start it, just to sort of show that there is an allegory, is the opening scene, which is this wrestling match. And, in an allegory, because a lot of people don't even know what an allegory is, it's where there's sort of another story being told through the symbols of the main story. It's not even necessarily like one-to-one. This character, a character can represent something very different from what they're presented as, but there's an internal logic that keeps the allegory going. And so it starts with this wrestling match where, there's a red and a blue fighter, and it's kayfabe, they're pretending to beat each other up. And so this is how the allegory starts, is this idea that the red versus blue is this kayfabe fight. It's the Democrats, it's the Republicans, it's Washington, it's sort of this whole idea that, the conflicts that we are presented with is just distraction and entertainment. And then in that wrestling match, there's actually this secret handoff where this whistleblower is trying to, or at least going to pretend to give over the information he stole in order to rescue his girlfriend, who was kidnapped by this paramilitary group. So you're sort of starting in the middle of this story, not with the beginning where he's trying to steal the information and get out or whatever. It's starting in this wrestling match of all things. And so, like, the allegory is that the public is always distracted by news and the politics and these big headlines and stuff like that, but secretly behind the scenes, that's all just distraction and theater. Behind the scenes, there is this very important disclosure struggle happening, and the names in an allegory are always, sort of big clues. And so I started doing an analysis of the names of the characters, and there's a little bit of details that we get because there's really very little character study here. These are very one-dimensional characters, which is good for an allegory because the more information you give, the more distracting the allegory becomes. And so we only learn a little bit about each of these main characters. The main character being Dr. Daniel Kellner, and I think they don't say it in the movie, but I think he's clearly supposed to be Jewish. Kellner is an Ashkenazi Jewish family name. Daniel is the name of a prophet in the Bible, and so it might seem like a stretch to just jump into the allegorical reasoning here, but he's this Jewish whistleblower scientist who's really into cryptography and unlocking the meaning of things through math. He can understand intuitively when he hears math symbols and these aliens speaking clicks and clacks and stuff like that. And he just intuitively hears it and understands it in English. He understands the meaning of it. He understands the equations and math sort of magically. It's not even, because he's such a genius. And you find out that this is because he was abducted as a child and the aliens gave him this gift. And so that's an allegory for basically Kabbalah. That Kabbalah is all about trying to, it's presented like a science, like within Kabbalah, within mysticism, they don't see it as just a religious process. They think that they are decoding the universe and that God used math and linguistics and symbols, to speak the universe into existence. There's this uniform code behind the way the universe was constructed. And so ultimately, the Kabbalah is an attempt to decode the universe. And Spielberg is basically saying the Bible is fake. The Bible is a lie, but it's based on these experiences that these Jews have had where they were visited by creatures and intelligence and told these secrets, and they've figured out enough that either the Bible is written as a cipher, it's a code book, or it's a misunderstanding of what really happened, that the angels are these aliens who visited them, that the Jews have always sort of been in contact with these aliens. And so we learn about Daniel Kellner that he was in university. He was breaking codes, and that got him in trouble, and then he got arrested. And when he got out of jail, he got immediately recruited into this, black ops suppression paramilitary group to serve them and to, help them to understand alien stuff, but not allow the public to see it. And I found that to be quite telling if it is an allegory, because, if it's Kabbalah, that starts in like the 1200s or so. And Jews, as an allegory, it actually kind of works that they were persecuted and they were not allowed to spread their message. It was a suppressed thing, especially from the Catholic Church. And so, I'll let you tell me where you want to go with the analysis here, because it's pretty.
Just keep continuing. Just go through the whole thing. I mean, I think it's really important that what they're trying to convey to people through this fiction, they're trying to convey, they're conveying actual concepts through this film.
Yeah.
And sometimes this fictional way of getting it across is actually more profound than something that is completely non-fictional. I mean, frankly, I think that they're trying to present something to the public in a subtle way. And one of the key components of this whole thing is the film starts with one of these wrestlers who's involved in this kayfabe pounding in the perspective, pounding on the audience, like literally shoving his foot in your face. Over to me, it was very stark and obvious exactly what Spielberg is saying. It's a complete the abasement of the audience. Like, I'm going to stomp on your face with this stuff. That's how it starts.
And it's like because let me explain this. Your audience, I'm sure, knows this. It's the kind of thing you would talk about, but there's the esoteric and the exoteric layer of stories when you're dealing with the occult. So the exoteric story is the obvious plot, the dialogue that is said on screen. It is the things you are literally being shown. It's the literal story. The esoteric story is this layer underneath that is meant for those who are initiated, who have enough knowledge to decode things. And so the movie itself is about decoding secret knowledge but the movie is doing that itself. It has a secret layer, and so it is doing the thing that it is talking about. It is showing you one thing literally, but there is this meaning underneath that the initiated are supposed to understand what's really going on. So yeah, being the audience being stomped on immediately, and then you find out that it's theater, and then you find out it's red versus blue. You find out that it's all a setup. I don't think it's a coincidence that the U.S. White House, had a UFC fight going on at the same time that Disclosure Day was being like opening
Promoted,
in theaters. So you have a literal fight in the White House lawn. And nothing like that has ever happened before, completely unprecedented. And Trump just happens to be doing a disclosure release like every weekend as there is a UFC fight, as Spielberg creates a movie about disclosure with a wrestling match with red versus blue and stuff. Like this is a coordinated psyop.
Right.
And
It's a psyop because there's war with Russia too. They mentioned right at the beginning, they emphasize that there's this global conflict between US and Russia.
That World War III is going to break out. You see a Korean ambassador at some point. So the implication is that North Korea could be, involved in this. You get these hints of what's going on in the background, but the movie does not emphasize the importance of World War III or that anything like that either. It's presented as almost a side issue compared to this real pressing issue of disclosure that is the only thing that really matters, because it changes the whole meaning of life itself and the history of humanity. And so he's trying to create this effect that disclosure is so big that it eclipses and dwarfs all human concerns and all conflicts, and this will be the thing that solves all wars, and probably because it destroys nationalism and the idea that we should have national interests, and that's the classic UFO propaganda, is that disclosure would destroy not only religious divisions but national divisions. That goes all the way back to H.G. Wells in The War of the Worlds, and this idea that Britain was not ready for alien invasion because they were too provincial and too compartmentalized, and the nations need to work together. It was sort of an advertisement for the United Nations and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, in this story, I'm just going to move to the next character here, this ex-Catholic girlfriend that he has, Jane Blankenship. So decoding the name Jane Blankenship, I think it's pretty obvious that she's supposed to be an unlikable sort of blank slate character, sort of a nobody who is just getting in the way of this disclosure movement. It's also bizarre. In classic storytelling, classic Spielberg, there would be some backstory to their relationship. You would have some emotional scene where you show that they love each other. That doesn't happen in this movie. She just sort of shows up as a kidnapped victim. And then even when they escape, they never get along. They're arguing the whole time. She's almost immediately, the main bad guy of the movie has this MacGuffin, magic device, alien device that can help him mind control somebody if you can visualize them. And she gets possessed by this bad guy. And it's from a normal exoteric storytelling level, this is one of the worst relationships on screen there's ever been in a movie. It's so flat. It's so weird. There's no love between these characters, and yet
they didn't know anything about each other, but they had sex, so that something happened. And then also, like,
she used to be a nun. That's like the big thing, is that she's a Catholic and she used to be a nun, and then she sort of fell away from the Catholic Church. And so allegorically, and this is, again, this might seem hard to swallow at first, but if you follow the internal logic of what the disclosure movement in real life has been saying, she represents the CIA and the national security apparatus in America. because disclosure people believe that it is the Christians within the high levels of the military and the intelligence community that are suppressing, not suppressing in the same way that um, the aerospace and like engineering companies who are really the bad guys, they're sort of suppressing it out of fear of what it would do to Christianity. And I've actually listened to a lot of these whistleblowers try to explain stuff. Stephen Greer is sort of the mascot of the whole movement. And he will tell you that it's always these pesky, annoying, clueless, fearful Christians in the Pentagon or in the CIA who are fascinated by UFO stuff and disclosure and the information, but they're not willing to allow it to be seen. And so here, she's jeopardizing the mission of disclosure accidentally because she's getting mind controlled by this bad guy. And so there's this idea that the CIA was essentially, and some people will argue with me on this, but it was essentially a Catholic operation to begin with. And it had these deep ties to the Vatican and the Italian mafia and these Catholic institutions to create the drug trade and Operation Gladio. If anybody,
so many of those guys were Catholics. Like they were very rigid Catholics. Actually, Casey was Catholic. It's a practice.
Yeah, Wild Bill Donovan was the founder of the CIA. He was a Catholic.
Knight of Malta, all over the place, everywhere.
Yeah, Knights of Malta, huge.
Dulles. But it's also interesting. She's mind controlled. She's also the mean one. So the ex-Catholic Christian is the one who has a knife inside of her like shirt. So like she's secretly a killer too. Like you got to really watch out. And right, she has a like reflection in the knife. Like she's so menacing. So they make the Christian like the most violent of all of the people involved in the film is her. That's also Bono's daughter, by the way. That's U2 Bono's daughter.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the logic here, the logic is always stretched. So it sounds like I'm interpreting it badly because it's a stupid narrative, but I believe that I'm correctly interpreting a stupid narrative. That's like it's not reflective of reality, but in their internal logic of the disclosure movement, see, she's an ex-Catholic who has sympathy for Christians, but she's not a practicing Christian. And so whether it's Jesuit, whether it's, I think it's just supposed to be this, she's an obstacle to the real disclosure movement. She's not special in the disclosure movement itself. That's why her name is Jane Blankenship. Jane, like plain Jane, supposed to be very like, almost nondescript, and Blankenship is like she's blank, she's not special. And that's to argue that Christians are really not, Spielberg is arguing that Christians are not important in this cosmic plan of disclosure. They're sort of misunderstanding the phenomenon, they're afraid of it, they're standing in the way of it. Daniel Kellner's character, who represents this Kabbalah, mystical, quantum science, sort of
Snowden figure. He's a Snowden figure, really on the run.
Yeah, that's how they're selling it, but they're allegorically, it's not any given individual, it's not any given person, it's the entire demographic of Jewish quantum science, Kabbalah, mystic people who are discovering this. And so you have to see each individual person as not an individual, a metaphor for a different individual, but as a demographic. And so this is an allegory about different demographics within.
Right, the allegory is real, though. This is always going back to UFOs. It goes back into the disclosure movement. The Christians are always been critical about it from the beginning. And a lot of the Christians are the ones who say UFOs are demons. So of course they're going to be against it. And all these guys, Greer, if you look at his background, the guy knows how to like presence orbs and stuff. Like he's off the chart, and his satanic symbolism is off the literal satanic symbolism of Stephen Greer. I'm not exaggerating.
I always remind people that he sells an app in the App Store that is designed. It's called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I believe. CE5 or something like that. And that is where you not only see aliens, you not only sort of communicate with them, but you have like a spiritual bond with them. And so he has a literal app designed to help you meditate and summon and conjure up these non-human intelligences, as he calls them, so that you can have a personal relationship with them. It's a purely religious initiation spiritual app to try to convince you to bond with non-human intelligence. And so it doesn't get more blatantly trying to initiate people than that.
Occultic, these guys are all the same, whether it's Peter Levenda, Whitley Strieber. There's so many occultists in this UFO movement. It's like a convention of occultists when they all get together. It's incredible. There's very few Christians, actually authentic Christians, promoting ufology or anything like that. Like, it's always something esoteric or Freemasonic or something like that. So you see this played out in all of these films, whether it's Contact, a person trying to keep from contacting aliens is some radical Christian who's trying to bomb things and subvert this what's coming about. And that's what this character is, this Jane character. And she's using Christianity to forestall it. She prays in Latin. She's in a convent. It's all there. Like,
she pierces her own hand with a crucifix in order to try to create enough pain that she snaps out of the trance that is as she's being mind controlled by this evil person. And so, you know, I'm happy enough to get in the ballpark of what this allegory is trying to say, because I would have to talk to Spielberg myself to, try to understand where exactly he was trying to get with it. But this major other piece of this allegory, I think, is obviously Emily Blunt's character, Margaret Fairchild. And this one was the one that really surprised me, because I was expecting a Christian allegory to demonize Christians and make them sound like they're part of the problem. And I was expecting, well, I wasn't expecting a Jewish mystical Kabbalah thing, but, that doesn't surprise me. But Emily Blunt's character surprised me because I was waiting to see, what does she really represent? Obviously, you could just say she's an attractive woman, and so she's a main lead character, and then she's part of the disclosure movement. But the details we get about her are quite surprising, because she has a theme of butterflies. She has, I believe, a butterfly necklace. Later on, we see a recreation of her childhood home where she was abducted, and her wallpaper on her bedroom is completely butterflies. And so you have this simultaneous messaging of metamorphosis, just transforming and awakening and becoming your true self, which happens to her when this bird lands on the table and she awakens to her psychic powers, or psionic powers, you could say. But also monarch programming, the idea of being abused as a child and then, being programmed through traumatic mind control. And so her story is that she ends up, when she was a child, she was met by woodland creatures in her bedroom, a deer and a fox and a bird, I think it was, something like that. And she sort of is clearly in this trance, and she walks through the wall of her home, just passes right through the material of the wall, and walks barefoot through this snowy field into the woods, and ends up in what she calls Hansel and Gretel's house. And so you have sort of Disney woodland creature princess symbology with the butterflies around the walls. You have this idea that she describes the snow as being warm on her feet. She doesn't think that it's uncomfortable or cold. She's very at peace, very subdued, trance state of mind. And one of the things I point out in the article that I don't think many people noticed, and I haven't seen anyone talk about, is the footprints in the snow go from being hooves and bird claws and fox prints or whatever. They start to transform into what looks like chicken feet and chicken footprints, which is if you see the aliens in the movie, these green alien characters or whatever, grays, they have those types of feet. And that's very important for the allegory because in Kabbalah and in Jewish Talmudic teaching, not even Kabbalah, just the Talmud, um, they say that demons have chicken feet. And they say that if you want to know if you've been visited by a demon at night, you should spread ashes around your bed. And if there's chicken footprints in the ashes when you wake up, you know that you've been visited by demons.
Wow.
And so the specific usage of chicken footprints in the snow, Spielberg is literally arguing that yes, aliens are demons, but demons are good. So he's not hiding that they're demons. He's saying if you know that, chicken feet equals demon, and these aliens that I'm showing you that I'm saying are good, they have chicken feet, and here's the footprints. They're saying that demons lure children out of their homes and abduct them and create a trance-like initiation for them where they're, and this is all suppressed knowledge. So you have the story is literally about two characters who were horribly traumatized as children and suppressed the knowledge of it until the time was right, and then they are activated like a sleeper cell to go and to reveal this big secret that destroys Christianity. And so these footprints literally mean, yes, aliens are demons, but it's more that he rejects the conceit that the Bible is telling the truth about demons. It's that Luciferian twist where Satan and demons are actually liberators. They're good. They're trying to help mankind reach our full potential. They unlock our psionic powers. They do all this good stuff for us that the Christians and the God is trying to suppress. They're always trying to stop us from reaching our full potential. And you look at other clues about this Margaret Fairchild character. First of all, her name, Margaret, is where the medieval name Gretel comes from. Margaret, Gretel. So she is the Gretel in the Hansel and Gretel. It's also odd because the house that they go to is not Hansel and Gretel's house in the fairy tale. That's the witch's house,
right,
that is trying to cannibalize them. And so you have child cannibalism being spun as being
child abduction, child cannibalism.
Yeah, you have that right in the story as being a positive thing, and she calls it Hansel and Gretel's house, which is like this weird sleight of hand he's trying to do where it's not the witch's house that she's going to, it's Hansel and Gretel's house, and her name means Gretel. Fairchild, obviously she's pale skinned and white, but also this is supposed to be about her innocence and her childlike nature that they keep emphasizing in the film. That I find it was hard for me to get that because she's had so much plastic surgery or whatever it is that she doesn't seem natural to me when I see her. Like, she's beautiful, but she looks fake, and I don't get a childlike sense from her. But from the writing, you can tell she's supposed to be this sort of very innocent, wide-eyed, empathic character, and so she has this childlike. Fairchild is her last name, and she lives in Kansas. Now, it doesn't matter whether that's Kansas or Kansas City. Any reference to Kansas is going to blatantly be a reference to the Wizard of Oz, and this idea that we're not in Kansas anymore. Kansas represents the state of ignorance, represents the state of purity before you see the man behind the curtain, you find out Oz. Again, it goes back to the kayfabe, this idea of unveiling. So it's tapping into both Hansel and Gretel and Wizard of Oz and the Disney princess, woodland creatures, fairy tales and stuff. So he's sort of tying in all of this childhood Disney-like programming into Margaret Fairchild's story. And she's also a weather woman, which is not a coincidence. The idea that she has this intuitive connection to the weather, and she does a dance. I don't know if you caught that, but every time it's going to have this big storm, she says she can't help but do this dance. And so you have a weather dance. She literally does a weather dance in the movie, and she claims that she can't help it. It's this feeling that comes over her where she has to do the dance. It's sort of a stupid moment in the movie. It doesn't add anything to the plot. It just seems like she's a sexy, appealing character. But they reference it a couple times. Her boyfriend mentions that she like does this shimmy, this dance when it's the storm. But the hailstorm she's predicting doesn't come. Well, it's because she was early. See, she's such an advanced witch, essentially, is what she represents. This European Germanic druid, that she actually has an intuitive spiritual connection to the weather. And so this is like white witch symbolism, which really surprised me because I'm like, what the hell is he doing with this in the middle of an alien disclosure film? This doesn't seem to have anything to do with UFOs or disclosure. And what it basically comes down to is that she's the New Age sort of archetypal good witch, anti-Christian white witch who is more empathetic and more intuitively, spiritually wholesome and pure than these Christians who are always, again, represented by the Jane character, conflicted and dour and miserable and
have a secret knife up their sleeve.
treacherous,
treacherous, yeah.
Honest. She is like almost comically open and honest and
no, she's saving the world. She's saving people's relationships. She's giving people information about their wives and their girlfriends and their boyfriends to actually save humanity. That's the message that's being conveyed. It's like she's like a healer.
The gimmick of her character is that she, every time somebody confronts her and wants to stop her, she reveals something about their most intimate secret feelings. She shapeshifts to, at least in their perception, shapeshifts to become their child or their father or some key character in their life. And so she can basically mesmerize and hypnotize people who are around her, which is, again, very witch-like, bewitching somebody. She is literally bewitching people all around her. And she wants to leave Kansas. And her boyfriend, who's sort of this dumb jock character, is trying to stop her from leaving Kansas. And so there's this weird narrative here where she has this urgent feeling that she needs to get out of Kansas, the state of ignorance. She needs to find this Jewish mystic scientist, and she doesn't know where he is. She's longing to see him. And so they really downplay the importance of both the Jane girlfriend and the Chad boyfriend. They both have to leave somebody in order to find each other. And allegorically, since we're talking about demographics here, the metaphor would be that quantum scientists need to hook up with New Ager, the New Age community, and bypass Christianity and unite as this power team where the quantum scientists, they're very technical. These are secret. It's basically secret information about how the universe works that is supposed to, again, debunk, traditional physics, and it gets into manifesting and the ability to, your consciousness affects reality. This is part of the whole quantum narrative, is that reality is actually basically a collective hallucination that we're having, and our perceptions and our beliefs change reality, which comports with and fits with the New Age teaching that you can manifest your own destiny. You can manifest riches and a good future and stuff. And so these two are compatible, but they don't know it. That's the heart of the allegory. It's not the heart of the explicit film that you're literally being told, but that's the allegory. And between it all, you have this elderly, wise figure called Hugo Wakefield, He's the black scientist, sort of father figure here, and he's was part of the paramilitary suppression, aerospace group. Um, but he stopped and he got 12 followers, so very much a Jesus figure with 12 disciples. Um, and you break down the name Hugo Wakefield, what do you get? Hugo, I didn't know this, but Hugo is apparently High German, Old High German. It means mind or thought or your senses. And Wakefield is his last name. So you're a field theory. It's very much about quantum physics, the interaction of invisible forces, these fields, and Wakefield. You're awakening these fields, and so this is you combine Hugo and Wakefield, you get somebody who is so awakened in their mind that they can basically alter reality. And what does he do throughout the film? He's in contact with the scientist. He's not in contact with Margaret Fairchild, but he gets in contact with her. He figures out where she is, and then he starts to subtly, he trains her, he coaches her on how to trust her intuition so that they can meet. And so he's this sort of middleman character who is orchestrating the disclosure. And I believe that this can only be a metaphor for Rosicrucianism or Masonry, or I think the best candidate is Theosophy, which is the mystical secret society that is trying to ultimately fulfill their destiny. They believe they have a destiny to enlighten mankind, to get us out of the dark ages, which they think includes Christianity, to break away from Christianity, to realize that we have this amazing power within us, that we are destined to conquer the galaxy, and or at least to have communion with non-human intelligence from the cosmos. And in Theosophy, in the New Age, you have this whole Christ consciousness phenomenon, where it's not that Jesus is the Christ and we all should worship this one man and obey what he says. It's that we each need to become Christ. We each need to discover our own Christ consciousness, and we all tap into that, and we all become like Christ, equal to Christ. And that's the New Age theosophical fantasy, is that we all become like Jesus, and he was just one guy, and his followers distorted his teachings, and that's why he became the center of this religion. But they would argue that we are all supposed to become that. And so allegorically, now you have the Jewish quantum scientists, Kabbalists, mystics, whichever angle of that you want to emphasize. I'm not sure which one Spielberg, maybe he just sees those as so interrelated that they're inseparable. And then you have this druidic, ancient, mystical side of things. And then between them, you have this hidden hand, this secret society of Theosophy that is trying to wed them. So they both have to break away from their existing relationships, that neither of them love their partners. Like Margaret Fairchild does not love the Chad character. The Daniel Kellner does not love the Jane character. And when they meet, they don't have a romantic relationship either. It's all business. It's all about trying to achieve disclosure. They're not they don't have any interest in each other sexually. And you find out that they had this shared childhood where they were both in this spaceship, this cabin in the woods that was not a cabin in the woods. It was a alien spacecraft, and the woodland creatures that led them there openly reveal themselves to be aliens once they're inside, and they're on these operating tables, and and they get these crystals forming around their eyes that implant some sort of weird thing in their eyes, and that they get implanted.
And then their eyes turn into butterflies, right? Like, I mean, wow. So the
in
butterfly theme is reflected there. One of the interesting aspects that they borrowed from Arthur C. Clarke is the notion that, in Arthur C. Clarke wrote Childhood's End, where the aliens disguise themselves. They don't show themselves as actually demonic. And that's what Clarke's a total pedophile, total Nambla pedophile. And there's some serious issues about, you mentioned the scene. Why are they 2 10-year-old like white European kids with blue eyes on the operating table in, being tortured by demons, if it's acknowledged that this chicken thing. But Arthur C. Clarke in Childhood End said the aliens didn't show themselves as their real person, and it's reflected right here in this film. Like, so they know the science fiction kind of background. Whoever wrote this, Cope, who's worked with Spielberg for a long time, they know some of these details or some of these motifs or tropes from science fiction and ufology.
Yes, I the like any normal person would be very creeped out at that point in the film where they are now, first of all, it's just a lie. So no matter which way you spin it, to lure a child into something with a trance like hallucination and lie to them and then suppress their memory, like, even if you don't know about MK Ultra, even if you don't know about Monarch, even if you don't know about the ritualistic sexual abuse of children and how that compartmentalizes their mind, it shatters their psyche, and they become like multiple personality disorder, all that stuff that goes along with it. It's just creepy on the face of it that especially once you see the alien, they're not cool looking. They're scary.
They're scary. They look like demons.
And so that's just blatantly on the surface. And then you can go as deep as you want below that as to what he is trying to imply here, that are we supposed to expect that in the future there's going to be basically an activation of all these monarch programmed people who are going to suddenly come out and proclaim that they have had experiences, that they are experiencers like the characters in this movie? Is this movie supposed to sort of serve as the activation? Are they waiting for a signal? Like, I'm not sure whether to put emphasis on this movie as being some sort of signal flare that actually matters and will change anything, especially because it's not popular and it's not getting a lot of traction. People aren't buying into it. Just like with Trump's disclosure stuff, like nobody's buying into it. But you can see that they're trying. And so that's all we can do when we're analyzing it, is what are they attempting to do?
Right. Well, these are all very influential, powerful people. Trump is the most powerful person on earth. And here he is telling that he's going to disclose something that nothing happens, much like this film. But one of the interesting themes, just to expand upon what you're saying, is that these two main characters, Kellner and Margaret, they do not have any memory before 10 years old. So they have this amnesia that is reflected in some of these people who have come out of these behavioral modification programs. So their literal behavior has been modified by aliens, not by the CIA or something like that. So it is incredible.
And it's presented as a good thing. I mean, that's the real bizarre, like, I feel like that's the main takeaway that you're supposed to have in this movie, aside from just anticipating disclosure, is that if you ever hear about somebody having a weird childhood, blank spaces in their memory, they were terrified even in the scene. The Daniel Kellner's character was terrified, and she had to hold his hand and comfort him and stuff like that. And so this is presented as a terrifying experience for these children, and that if you ever hear somebody testify about these things, that it's actually a good thing. These kids were terrified. They were abducted. They were transformed against their will, with
traumatized and amnesia. These are all words, standard words of mind control.
Yeah, and that this is an ennobling, beautiful thing, that a gift that these aliens give them because they have this higher destiny. One of the key phrases they use in the movie that sort of convinced me that this was really trying to go for the allegory is that several times this Hugo Wakefield, elder wise figure, he says the phrase, "It's always been you two." It's so Yeah, you could say that's, he's referring to the fact that for the 30-year-old, 35-year-old, however old these characters are, they have always had this shared trauma, this shared history together. But allegorically, what he's saying is that these are the two demographics, these are the two groups that have always been in contact with aliens and have always experienced these things and are the chosen messengers of the aliens. So you have the Druids, this ancient Germanic, European culture of animal worship, spiritism, believing that the pagans believed that the gods took the form of animals and visited humans, like that's in Greek and Roman mythology. You have this whole history of animals being disguised and actually representing gods, which in this movie, aliens are gods and gods are aliens. There's no distinction there. There's no higher power above aliens. It's just aliens are these spiritual figures that come and visit us in different forms. And then humans misunderstand them. But in the allegory, Druids are one strain of revelation. They're this one group that has had this long history. It's always been with them. Jews, apparently, this is my reading, have been the other one, that they have sort of received more of the linguistic, if you believe that Hebrew is this, language that God used to create the universe, then Hebrew would be this.
It has a mystical quality to it. The language itself, according to Jews, has like the mystical quality.
And that's why they believe they are the chosen people, that they have this, this insight into the very substructure of the universe, the metaphysics of how reality itself works. And the Kabbalah is always about trying to understand the way that the universe started, and the way that angels are essentially this lower order of beings who are closer to the light, closer to the origin than us, and so they have to initiate us upward. And the symbol of the Israel, the hexagram, as above, so below. The whole, it gets into the hermetic, thing. That it's sort of this syncretic. All mysticism sort of is supposed to culminate in Kabbalah. They are the masters of all these mystical schools of ancient thought, including the Greeks and the Romans and the everything. They sort of tie it all together, and they're supposed to be the ones that understand it. And so if you hear Hugo Wakefield's character, this theosophy type character, saying it's always been you two, I believe what Spielberg is trying to say is that Christianity was never really part of the conversation. They never got the real revelation. They are not keepers of the truth. It's always been pagans, New Agers, and well, of course they wouldn't have called themselves New Agers, but like basically the New Age movement, which represents this Druidic, ancient European tradition, and Jews. They are the ones who are actually destined to be together. They have to leave their current relationships. The Jewish mystical people have to break away from Christianity and reject them. The European Druidic New Ager characters have to leave Kansas. They have to leave this pleasant state of ignorance where there's nothing wrong with Margaret Fairchild's life. She's not running from some paramilitary group. She's just a weather woman that everybody loves. And so they both have to reject their current status quo and find each other. And theosophy will be the thing that basically gives them the instructions, awakens their ancient memories, tells them about their history where they didn't even realize they had the shared history. The Jews and the Druids never seem to know about each other. They don't talk about each other. But if they are both visited by aliens and they both have this shared scary / profound history with being visited by the non-human intelligence, as they would call it in the disclosure movement, then yeah, their destiny is to basically break away from their current relationships and tell the world how reality works and set up aliens as being uh, the big answer. And then, um, just as one example that I've seen in my own personal life, I've heard people I know talk about this, and I don't know how popular it is in general culture, but there's this concept of the indigo child, um, which is a new age 1970s term, which again, 1970s, as you know, very powerful child abuse period of time where they're trying to normalize the whole satanic panic, you know, uh, finders and just the people who are
McMartin, on and on.
so the indigo child is the idea that basically these people are not just these kids are not just sort of creative and rebellious and interested in different things. They have a special aura chakra. They have this um, astrological communion with the stars, and they are destined for different things. And so, destined to, as they say, um, challenge traditional systems and elevate human consciousness. And so, traditional systems is code speak for Christianity and modernity, basically capitalism, um, and elevate human consciousness. That's the theosophical idea that you know we will all find our Christ consciousness and we will all elevate, or at least some people will. There'll be this big sorting out. That's the age of Aquarius, is the idea that um, some people will be able to survive into the age of Aquarius. The rest of them will have to be purged and killed. But yeah, that's essentially that's the allegory in a nutshell, is that these Jewish and Druidic traditions need to converge under the supervision of theosophy, and you'll realize that what Christians have called demons are indeed spiritual beings that have interfaced with humans for thousands of years, but they're actually the good guys, and Christians have been suppressing the good demons from teaching us about empathy, I guess, or the whatever the message is that they're ultimately trying to share here is
The
basically
powers, the literal powers. You can learn math, the math of the universe, the language of math. You can learn how to other people, ESP, all at one mint. It's all there. Like that's what these demons are providing to Margaret and this guy, Daniel. That's literally what the message is. There's incredible statements in this. When the guy Hugo brings out this kind of alien technology, he literally says something like straight out of Crowley. He says, make this an instrument of your will. Give yourself over to it. Like he's literally, so it's a stand-in for the aliens. Like you can have this technology that'll give you knowledge and power and all the stuff. So classic like temptations of like Satan in Genesis, which they mentioned. So this is to me, when I walked out this morning, like I said earlier, this was one of the most evil movies I have ever seen. And I don't even think they cared about making a good movie. I don't think that was the point. Like you said, this is not a good movie because that wasn't the point. This is a propaganda piece. This is a satanic UFO propaganda piece to its core that's totally inversionary and subverts Christian ideas and even just biblical ideas in general, even the Old Testament. It's incredible. And at the end, she brings about world peace and resolves everybody's problems. So if you go with the aliens, you're never going to suffer. It's just like the great Luciferian temptation. Like, come under my wing and I'll solve all your problems. It's absolutely incredible.
And this, the reason why this matters is not that Spielberg has the power to, shape history or anything like that. He's just a messenger. He's just part of some cabal that has to keep pushing this thing. The reason why it matters is because it connects and resonates so closely with what the real life disclosure movement is trying to pitch constantly, that this, if we got the secret suppressed reverse engineered 0 point energy, this idea that the Pentagon is hiding all of this secret tech that they got from aliens. The aliens have been trying to offer us life-changing, revolutionary magic healing powers and magic, not magic, I guess, quantum science or whatever, however they would explain it, but that basically, it's not just Christ consciousness and a personal, improvement of your psyche and your spiritual life, but yes, it would end all wars. It would end nationalism. It would transform the whole world forever. And so this disclosure is tied up in the idea of not only this new age of understanding the universe, but of literally receiving gifts from the gods as they would sort of think of it, as Spielberg is trying
It's
to
their
pitch
version
it.
of gifts of the Spirit, gifts of the Holy Spirit. It's their version. Disclosure Day is in direct contravention with Judgment Day. Disclosure Day is their paradise. It's not based on the Bible. And the world has changed forever, is what they say at the very end. And that's what it is. And you're supposed to listen. So this fictional thing is full of like real world, like concepts and things that they're trying to impart to the listener. It's 2.5 hours of like almost pure satanic Luciferian evil. It's incredible.
Yeah,
There's literally one more thing, Terry. Literally, one of these little girls at 10, they recreate this house. So they make the backdrop of the entire movie Americana, middle America, all white, pretty much. I mean, some of the other like elites are Indian or black, so the neurologists and stuff like that. So they've got their kind of diversity, kind of interjection in there. But the whole thing is like this normalcy of diners and American cars and American trains and backdrops of like that. So they're juxtaposing that with that. They're trying to. This is part of the influences. They're trying to propagandize normal Americans with this very abnormal ending and outcome, and it's just absolutely incredible that they put that in there. There's no longer unconventional these ideas. They say it at the end. This movie is totally evil, and these are all gifts of the Spirit. Like in some of these alternate religions, whether you're in like the yoga's supposed to grant you these kind of gifts too, but invisibility is one of them. So there's all these like plays and mind melds and all this stuff in here that's really kind of new age thought.
Yeah, and the tying together of I like to obviously I wrote these articles about Jake Barber and these different whistleblowers who have come out and explained these things. They have been trying to launch this for a while, that the Pentagon holds the secrets. The government is trying to suppress the secrets of this, what would essentially be a religious revolution. Christians are going to be the first ones in the line of fire who have to admit that they were wrong or wildly adapt their thinking. But yes, they themselves, and it sounds stupider than even the movie, that these special forces guys come out and say that these are angels and demons. They've been summoning them in secret government programs, and that the only way to interface with them and to summon them is to channel love towards them. I mean, that's real life headlines that they're trying to push into the narrative. Spielberg is, in a way, like he's dealing with the biological aliens, and you see this footage. We should talk about that, where you see them being tortured on operating tables, and that's supposed to be this gruesome image that that Jane character, she can't even look at it. It's so grotesque that these aliens have been sliced open and killed on this table. And people have pointed out that there's very much like a Gaza genocide sort of parallelism going on, where you see these bombed out structures and these aliens, languishing and dying in the rubble, and you're supposed to be so sympathetic towards these aliens. And as people have pointed out, it's like real life people are being murdered and genocided right now, and it's being ignored, and nothing's being done about it. But you are supposed to imagine that aliens have been persecuted, and that's who you're supposed to sympathize with. The current human problems are not an issue. Like you said, World War III is sort of happening in the background of this movie, and it doesn't emphasize it at all. it's sort of equated with the kayfabe wrestling match. And so that even that is the sort of the satanic reframing of what humans' priorities should be. It's not that, humans are suffering and the aliens are going to help us, you know, or that we need to help each other. We need to stop wars. It's that we all need to stop everything we're doing. There's this ridiculous scene where, as the footage is being played across CNN and all these other news stations, every person in the world is stopped and watching their smartphone, and they're just captivated by this footage. And one of the most unbelievable and like the idea that nobody would ignore that. Nobody's busy. Nobody just has to keep moving. Like the whole world stops in its tracks all around the world, and they watch this, and presumably, the next thing that they say that they don't say in the movie would be some message about the history of mankind, or they would unveil something. I'm curious if we're going to get any. I feel like this is like a setup for some other disclosure, right? Some other revelation. They're trying to set up what the big message is, and if the allegory that I'm looking at is accurate, what we should expect next would be New Agers and quantum scientists coming out to sort of explain how the UFO phenomenon fits into this scientific, spiritual, cosmological worldview that revolutionizes everything, and in the process sort of debunks religions and nationalism, and therefore we should all get along, and we should all put aside our prejudices and our normal fears, and that this movie's sort of even frames the bad guys of the movie as sympathetic, that there's no real such thing as evil. There's only humans who are afraid of things. The main villain of the movie, not that it's fleshed out in any sort of interesting way, but there's some sort of traumatic thing in his past with his wife dying, and so that's why he's such a bitter person and why he's such a meanie. And if only we could all understand each other, then we would put aside our conflicts.
He's the great white oppressor meanie. Hugo's the black guy, the thoughtful kind of in the wisdom black person or black woman motif. It's the same old kind of claptrap, like somebody said in the thing. But I think the setup for disclosure is the point. That is it. That is the point. It's not to actually have actual disclosure. It's to set up. That's the satanic initiation you're talking about. It's not to have a conclusion. It's to set you up to take that next step into the occult, or into theosophy, which is the occult, or into that Barbara Marx Hubbard worldview, where you're communicating with these entities. That's it. That's how deep and dark this film is. It's totally evil.
Built on child abuse. Like it's
yeah. I gotta prep for another show, so I gotta kind of wrap it up. Where can people find your? Is there anything you like to add, or anything you like? Anything I missed?
No, I would just say, if people want to read these articles, my Substack is The Winter Christian. So winterchristian.substack.com. It's been getting a lot of positive reception. So people are interested in this. A lot of people don't really care about seeing the movie, but they want to know what it's trying to do. And so I'm open to more comments and debate about what exactly it means. But yeah, this is a big swing. It might be a miss, but it's a big swing at trying to push this alien, not only disclosure, but an occult satanic worldview with it.
A lot of these, Paul says in the chat, experiencers, mind control. It's a good point, because I've read a book called Among the UFO People, and he says that these experiencers also are into the occult. They talk to their ancestors. They communicate with animals. So UFO is like one in a suite of like extrasensory things, or whatever schizo things these people are experiencing. Squiffy, the reviews are atrocious. Enemy Blunt, I think she's a good actress. I got to give her credit. She actually kind of pulled off this kind of really mid movie.
Yeah. I feel bad for her because she has no good writing to work with. Like, so the lines in here are so so bad. It's such stiff writing.
Yeah, she's a great actress. I really appreciate. I really like. I was like, this movie's super mid, but she's good. There's a lot of numerology. I was looking for it. I mean, I only watched this once in the theater. It was like 20 minutes of freaking intro ads before the movie started. It's freaking terrible. I don't know what this person's talking about. Annoying tie. Well, my friend, I have to get a new keyboard, guys. It doesn't makes a lot of noise. I'm sorry. Let's see. Oh, this was a real event in Rua. I'm familiar with Rua, Zimbabwe. John Mack covered that. Building
Yes, I've
Eden
heard
in
of
your
that
heart.
too.
Yeah. I think the anti-Christian narratives were pushed for promote. Well, it worked. I mean, it got people's attention to see what it is. But it's part of it. It's definitely is. Zero cultural impact. I hope so. I mean, I think that they tried to have a cultural impact and they tried to get some buzz for this, but I wouldn't spend 2.5 hours watching this, guys. I would take it back, but I think it's important of what they're trying to impart. That's
And that's the whole UFO movement sort of has this syndrome where they're pushing as hard as they can. It's a delicate subject. They can't push it too hard, or else people will sort of have this reaction where it sort of becomes comical. So they're trying to slow roll it out, but you kind of have to remember that just because it's a psyop, that doesn't mean it's going to work. These guys can fail at a psyop. They can waste money and resources trying to sell you something, and that's a large part of this whole history. Failed
right.
attempts at brainwashing. Like we haven't, and it's because the Christians are here. It's because of me and you. It's because of people like us in your community and my community who see through this stuff. And that's why they hate us so much. They hate the fact that we can just see through their propaganda, and and they resent us for it. So now they're setting up this. They're sort of soft launching the tribulation. They're like, Christians are sort of in the way of world peace. We might have to get rid of them.
They've always been. Barbara Marx Hubbard said that we have to get rid of the Christians. They're holding us back. A quarter of humanity has to go. And you've seen this. We're in a genocidal phase right now, whether it's Russia or Gaza or Iran, which they're not stopping. This is like the agenda against Iran is not stopping. So, but hey, if you follow the aliens, we could have world peace, is what they say at the end. Yeah, this is the alternate to Judgment Day, guys. It's Disclosure Day. It's totally transgressive. Let's see. Go to space, bro. Let's see. Christos. Kabbalah's necromancy. I think so. I think you're right. A lot of the same guys. AP gifts. Hey, welcome. I get all your emails, AP. I appreciate it. If I don't respond, I apologize. But some of the same names I'm seeing. Hey, Gerald, Lizzie. We had a couple hundred live listeners, so thanks everybody for listening live. Go subscribe to Terry's Substack, guys. It's well worth your time. He covers other things that we did not covering today, but a lot of variations on the same theme. I mean, no question. Thanks a lot. I'm trying to be more attentive to all of these chats, but it's really hard to keep up. But I do appreciate all the chats and support, everybody. Bart, just want to say hi to everybody. Great show. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for showing up, Johnny. Really appreciate it. If you like the show, share it too. And go check out, like I said, go check out Terry Wolfe stuff. And our other interviews, which I talked about at the beginning. If you missed the beginning, you can see that stuff. Yeah, Rosemary's Baby is at the Dakota, literally across Central Park from Jeffrey Epstein's hell mansion. Can't believe Bono's daughter got involved with this. I was surprised to hear that too. Boomers are going to buy into this sinker. Maybe, who knows?
I will say the UFO. I said in a previous article that I think disclosure is sort of the finale of the psyop that boomers have been experiencing their whole life. That it's sort of the finale, the Avengers Endgame sort of climactic of their cinematic universe they've been building around boomers, where John Lennon, sings Imagine, there's imagine a world with no borders. That's sort of the dream of the key boomer dream is the Cold War programs them to think that nationalism is bad. And then eventually the aliens come out to tell you, indeed, there should be no nations. It's all just that creates the problems. I feel like this is, in a way, it is the capstone of the boomer psyop world that they have been trained to live in their whole life.
We have to get rid of those pesky Christians, and then you guys can have all kinds of ESP and world peace. Much thanks, Gerald. Much love to you as well. Love all you guys. Really appreciate all the support and listening and comments, like all these great comments that you guys have, which you can hopefully check out there. Thanks, AP Gifts. Yeah, thanks for all your work, AP Gifts. You've done so much great work. You can check the stuff out by AP Gifts, like a lot of email chains and a lot of great researchers. Like I've synced up with so many great researchers out there, like Terry Wolfe, all that stuff. Do you like all women, just one? I don't know what you mean by that. Anyway, Terry Wolfe, Winter Christian. How many books do you have now? 5, 4?
I think it's probably about 6. And by the way, it wasn't about this, but I plan on releasing a new book on Israel in prophecy next month. So that'll be something to look forward to.
Oh, yeah, come on, let's promote it. What's the name? Do you have a working title?
It's going to be called Riding the Beast. So it's going to be a good one. It's about the Whore of Babylon and how it fits into modern politics and prophecy. So it's almost ready to release, and very excited for that one. It's going to be very relevant to the Iran war and everything that's been going on with Israel, the merging of the military, of America and Israel's military. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening right now that happens after I've already written the book. It's just confirming what I was writing about. So excited for that.
Congrats on that. Yeah, reach out to me, or I'll keep you in mind to promote that when it gets. Do you have an exact publication date?
No, I don't. Not yet.
Okay. It'll be next month in July. And again, the author is Terry Wolfe, Wolfe, and the Winter Christian. And we talked about the occult allegory of this film, Disclosure Day. In my opinion, one of the most evil movies I've ever seen, as somebody who has studied the occult and theosophy and all this stuff. Really dark. I mean, it's presented as like this. That's the whole thing about like the devil and evil stuff, is it's presented as good. And that's probably one of the most, and these like nice looking actors and stuff. But when you look at the philosophy underneath this film, it's very evil. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.